everyone, my name is Sean, and in today's video we're going to be looking at the Thunder Dragon archetype, its weaknesses and its strengths in Yu-Gi-Oh! Legacy of the Duelist and in Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, and how we can make it work more viable for Link Evolution's online ranked format. Thunder Dragons were used to be one of the best decks in the game, particularly throughout 2018 to 2019. They were very impressive thanks to this card here, Thunder Dragon Colossus. Thunder Dragon Colossus stopped many engine-based cards or starter cards in the game because it says that cards cannot be added from the main deck to your opponent's hand except by drawing them. By putting this floodgate style monster on the field, a lot of decks just couldn't play through it because this card had 2600 attack, 2400 defense, and even protection from being destroyed by battle or card effect. So it was a very oppressive monster to deal with. And the best way to deal with it was to not play cards that were affected by it at all, and not every deck could afford to do so. Now, this card was banned in January 2020, and it's hurt this deck in more ways than one. You see, with this deck, it's one of its best lines to play as a starter engine, was to use Thunder Dragon's effect and Thunder Dragon's Dark effect, which are discard based effects, and then summon a card like Batteryman Solar, and by doing so, you could use Thunder Dragon's Colossus effect to summon it directly to the field, and by attributing one Thunder effect monster, Thunder effect, non-fusion monster on the field. My apologies for tripping up my words there. Because you no longer had Colossus, this whole entire line of play is no longer any usable and it's no longer viable, and therefore it hurt this deck in more ways than one, and it made Thunder Dragon Dark and Thunder Dragon go from being really good starter cards into mostly being extender cards, and therefore the pool of starters for this deck was hurt a lot. But what also hurt this deck quite a bit more is that you had to then rely on these two cards here being your starters, Aloof Lupine and Batteryman Solar. These cards are really good, but they don't work well together. They kind of clash with one another and what each other's goal is to do. Aloof Lupine, when normal summoned, you can banish one monster from your hand and banish one monster from your deck with the same type of your monster. This is really great because you normal summon and you can trigger a lot of your Thunder Dragon card effects because they activate when they are banished. But then there is Batteryman Solar. When this card is normal or special summon, you can send one Thunder monster from your deck to the graveyard instead of being banished. Now, why this kind of conflicted is certain cards work really well with cards being in the graveyard, like the Chaos cards. These cards really like having cards in the graveyard to then banish them. But then the Aloof Lupine is stronger because you don't have to do an extra step in order to trigger your effects. You just normal summon, activate your effects. And neither of these are really that searchable. So these cards, they're okay, but they don't really work well together. And therefore the starters of this deck just weren't really as good as they were before. So we have a fusion based deck where most of the cards in the main deck are actually extenders. And what does that really remind you of that I've covered on this channel recently? Well, it reminded me a lot of the Shadow archetype, very similar in nature, where most of the main deck monsters are really not starter cards, but they're extenders that want to be used for their effects, as opposed to being used for their effects as extenders during fusion summons and to set up your plays, as opposed to being used as starters. And an engine that helped out Shadows that's also going to help us out here is the Invoked Engine. The Invoked Engine is really good because it gives you the starters, 7 starters in the form of Magical Meltdown, Terraforming, and Alistair the Invoker himself, but also searches out a spell-based extender with Invocation that can both send cards from your hand to the graveyard or banish cards in your graveyard to do a fusion summon. And that works perfectly for the Thunder Dragon archetype because some effects you want to trigger when they're in the graveyard or your banish pile, or some effects you want to trigger in the hand, and having that option to do either one or the other is a lot better than, say, relying on drawing into your chaos monsters. So the starters for the deck are as follows. We have 3 Alistair the Invoker and 1 Aloof Lupine. Alistair the Invoker can be searched out through Magical Meltdown, which we also play at 3, and we have Terraforming to search that card out too. We also have Allure of Darkness in here at 2, where you draw 2 cards and banish 1 dark. Really great card in this deck because you can banish your dark or your raw in order to trigger their effect. And I'll talk about what they do later on. And then you have Gold Sarcophagus. Gold Sarcophagus can banish any card from your deck. And a good thing to do with this card is to banish Thunder Dragon Raw. Then Raw will trigger. Raw will then special summon any Thunder Dragon monster from your deck to the field. And a really good target for that is Thunder Dragon Dark. Then while this card is on the field and it is sent from the field to the graveyard, say for a link summoning or a fusion summon, whatever, you can then trigger its effect to search out any Thunder Dragon card in your deck and add it to your hand. So nice little synergy there between Gold Sarcophagus, and Allure of Darkness kind of works the same way as well. We also have 3 copies of Instant Fusion. Thunder Dragon Titan, your main boss monster, can be summoned by banishing 1 Thunder monster from your hand and 1 Thunder Fusion monster you control. And there is a target you can summon with Instant Fusions to do this. So we are playing 3 copies of this. And then we also have 1 for 1 because it can put cards in your graveyard and can special summon that Thunder Dragon Matrix from your deck to the field. And that is going to do your monster, your starter lineup. We also have 1 copy of Salamangreat Almirage. This is to basically put Alistair the Invoker into the graveyard without using up your monster count. You don't have to play this card though, it really doesn't matter much for this deck. And we're not playing like Invoked Purgatory or anything right now. Extenders, most of your Thunder Dragons are extenders. We have Thunder Dragon itself, the OG. You discard this card to add up to 2 Thunder Dragons from your deck to your hand. Now the reason why you do this is obviously to put cards in your graveyard, which you can use for fusion summoning. But you can also do this to trigger out your Thunder Dragon Titans effect, and I'll talk about that later on. We have Thunder Dragon Dark, which is very similar. You discard this card to add 1 copy of itself from your deck to your hand. But also, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard or to your banished pile, you can add 1 Thunder Dragon card from your deck to your hand. By the way, all the Thunder Dragons work in the same way, except for the original one. They either have a discard effect or a effect that triggers when banished or sent from the field to the graveyard. So I'm not going to read that part out every single time, except for Duo. Hawk's discard effect is to special summon a Thunder monster from your banished pile or your graveyard, kind of like a Monster Reborn style effect. And its banish effect is to shuffle any number of cards from your hand into the deck and draw that. This isn't too bad. It's not really what we want for this card. But if you do say draw too many things like Invocation early or too many multiples early, you can shuffle them back in, I guess. We have 3 Matrix. Matrix can replace itself when sent from the field or banished by adding another copy of itself. And also it is a quick effect discard to add to increase 1 Thunder monster's attack by 500 attack. And this is really important for your Titan. We have Thunder Dragon Roar. Thunder Dragon Roar, when banished, can special summon any Thunder Dragon to your field. And when it is discarded, can add any Thunder Dragon card from your banished pile or your graveyard back to your hand, including your trap cards and fusion spell. We have 1 Foolish Burial. Foolish Burial is most of the time normally a starter, but because it doesn't actually directly trigger any of your monster's effect, it just puts them in the graveyard. In here, it's mostly an extender. We have Invocation, amazing card for this deck. Loops your Alistair, banishes your cards, summons monsters to the field that are defensive. Really great card for this deck. Then we have Monster Reborn, and we also have 3 Thunder Dragon Fusion. Thunder Dragon Fusion and Invocation work really well together. Invocation can banish cards in your graveyard to summon out a fusion monster. Thunder Dragon Fusion can shuffle back into your deck cards from your graveyard or your banished pile. So the cards that you're banishing with Invocation are never really lost because you're going to shuffle them back in with Thunder Dragon Fusion, and this is going to allow you to grind out really well. Thunder Dragon Fusion is obviously used to summon out Titan, and that takes any 3 Thunder Dragon monsters to do this, so Thunder Dragon Fusion isn't really that hard to make live. Also, Thunder Dragon Fusion has a second effect, and that is during the turn that this card was not sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card itself to add 1 Thunder monster from your deck to your hand. Really great resource management card, and this card, even when it banishes itself, isn't lost because you can use Dark Roar's effect to add it back to your hand. Fantastic card for this deck. Another really underrated card for this deck that kind of works as an extender but is also defensive and also a removal card is Thunder Dragon Discharge. The activation of your Thunder monster's effect cannot be negated once per turn. Once per turn, if a Thunder Dragon monster is normal or special summoned to your field, you can target 1 spell or trap card on the field, banish 1 Thunder monster from your deck, and if you do, destroy that target. Obviously, with your cards being triggered when banished, you will then get to use their effects afterwards, plus you get to pop cards on your opponent's field. And then also your cards cannot be negated as well. So this card is fantastic for this deck. Really underrated card. Extra deck extenders here, we have Kaminari Attack. This is your instant fusion target to help make Titan. Titan says that you can be summoned by banishing 1 Thunder monster from your hand and also 1 Thunder Fusion monster from your field instead of using your polymerization, and therefore Kaminari Attack fulfills that purpose. And then we have Cross Sheep and Predaplant Verti Anaconda. Their effects work really nicely in fusion based decks to do raw extenders, but they definitely both are not required. You can take them both out if you want to. For removal effects, we have Instant Fusion can get Thousand Eyes Restrict. We talked about Discharge already. And then we've got Titan. So Titan is your main form of removal, but there's something you need to understand with this card. How this card works is when a Thunder Monster effect is activated in hand, even during the damage step, you can destroy one card on the field. So you discard your Thunder Dragon for its effect, your Dragon Dart for its effect, any of your Thunder Dragons, you activate their effects, and then Thunder Dragon Titan can destroy a card on the field. But be aware, this card says when a Thunder Monster's effect is activated. Not if a, but when a, or if this. It says when a. Cards that say when a are subject to a ruling in this game called missing the timing. What this basically means is if your opponent responds to Thunder Dragon, the card that you've discarded before you do, Titan will not be able to activate. Let me explain with an example. Let's say you do Thunder Dragon's effect as Chain Link 1, and then your opponent does MST to destroy a card on the field as Chain Link 2. Thunder Dragon, the last thing to happen was MST was being activated and not a card being discarded, therefore Titan has missed the timing to be activated. It is a really big weakness to this card, and players that know this will deliberately try to interrupt your Titan with their own cards so that you can't pop their cards. That being said, what you can do with this card is play through your opponent's disruptions and let them use as many cards as possible so they don't have resources that they can chain with quite easily, and that way your Titan's a little bit more secure. It's also, it doesn't, not many people seem to know this as well, so it is that kind of, Titan is a bit more reliable, particularly in Link Evolution, but just be aware that this card has that as a weakness if you're going to apply this deck out. Also, Titan is very durable as well. He's a defensive card, because if this card will be destroyed by card effect, you can banish any 2 cards from your graveyard instead. So really great protection effect on a big beater monster. Defensive cards, we talked about most of them already. These cards can be used as quick effects during your opponent's turn to trigger Titan's effect to pop their cards, so they're kind of defensive cards as well. Ideally, any turn you summon Titan, you want at least one of these cards in your hand before you go to your opponent's turn, and that way you can trigger their effect. But by the way, what's nice about this effect is this deck is this is when my apologies, no, never mind, don't worry about what I was about to say. Dimensional Fissure is in this deck as well. You're gonna see that in my video, I'm not playing Dimensional Fissure. I'm actually playing another trap card, and that is Thunder Dragon 100 Thunders. I was testing this card out. I don't really like it. I took it out for D-Fissure, so just be aware of that. D-Fissure is really good. Playing this card on the first turn, a lot of decks cannot play through this card. It hurts so many decks, and your deck doesn't care about your cards being banished, so why not play it? Other than that, Magical Meltdown is a defensive card because it makes it so that your fusion summons cannot be negated and your opponent cannot activate cards and effects when a monster is summoned this way. Protects instant fusion, protects Thunder Dragon fusion, protects invocation. And then Discharge as well stops your Thunder Monster's effects from being negated. Between these 2 cards, you have a lot of good protection. Speaking of protection, we also run 3 copies of Invoked Mechabar. Takes 1 Alistair the Evoker and 1 Light Monster, which you have plenty of to use. If your opponent activates a spell, trap, or monster effect, you discard a card that is the same, a spell, trap, or monster effect to negate and banish it. And what's great about this deck is most of the time in Invoke decks, you are relying on the Alistair you've looped back to your hand to negate monster effects, but you've got other cards you can use instead. You're going to load your hand with resources for Mechabar to be usable as well. Cards that you don't have to play, but I put in this deck just to see what they're like, are Caligar and Raijin. Raijin can be someone with instant fusion, but you definitely don't have to run him. And then we've also got Caligar. I don't really care for Caligar's effect too much, but what I do like about it is that there might be situations where you've only got dark Thunder Dragon monsters in your hand, and you've got no lights in your graveyard, and therefore you want these darks in the grave to trigger their effects later on, and you want to use Invocation to put them in the graveyard from your hand. Then you can use Caligar with Alistair. You can use Alistair to summon that Caligar and then put them in your graveyard without actually activating their effects. Because I'm not making this clear, my apologies. What I'm basically trying to say here is, let's say you want to do Dark's effect to add a card from your deck to your hand, or you want to do Raw's effect to special summon a card from your deck. If you activate their cards' effects from their hand and discard them to your graveyard, you can't then do those other effects because you've already used one of their effects. Caligar can use them as a fusion summon material, put them in the graveyard, and then you could trigger their effect later on and get the better effect out of these cards. Millennium Eyes Restrict, defensive card, Titans in here, and Linkuriboh. So let's go into the build and get into some gameplay. We have 3 Alistar, 1 Lupine, 3 Thunder Dragon OG, 1 Dark, 3 Dark, 1 Duo, 1 Hawk. I didn't talk about Duo. Duo is a Chaos Thunder Dragon monster. It's not really that good, but it can banish 1 light and 1 dark monster in the graveyard. It can also extend your plays by banishing a card in your graveyard to add Thunder monsters from your deck to your hand, and it can also put one of your banished cards back into the bottom or the top of your deck. That's what he does. He's not that great, but he's searchable. Hawk is in here, Matrix is in here at 3, double Roar, double Darkness, 1 Dimensional Fissure, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Sarcophagus, 3 Instant Fusion, 3 Invocation, 3 Magical Meltdown, 1 Monster Reborn, 1 1-for-1, 1 Terraforming, 3 Fusion, and 3 Discharge. Extra deck, we have 1 Caligar, 3 Mechabar, 1 Raijin, 1 Kaminari Attack, 1 Millennium Eyes, 1000 Eyes, 3 Titan, 1 Cross Sheep, 1 Link Rebo, 1 Verte Anaconda, 1 Amirage. Just want to say that you can easily take out Amirage, Verte, you could take out Cross Sheep quite easily, you could take out Raijin, you could take out Caligar to have some extra space in there, and if you do, this can allow you to play some other engines in this deck. You could play the Rainbow Neos engine in this deck quite easily, and that's nice because by using Neos Fusion, it puts a dark monster and or another light monster in your deck into your graveyard, and that can be used for materials to summon with, and plus you get Rainbow Neos out to the field. You could also do Mech Knights in this deck, which works quite nicely. Just the same reason why it works with Alistar is the same reason why it works here as well. Or you can play Dangers in this deck as well, which can discard himself and draw more cards. All very, very viable. You could do Super Poly in this deck as well. These are really like the mandatory cards. Even these cards here aren't really mandatory, so if you need more extra deck space, you can play with that there, play around with that, but yeah, it's up to you guys. Right, that's enough of a deck profile. Let's get into some video and get things going. Let's go to... Did I just see Rick? Holy crap, is he back? Huh. I wonder if he's back. Sorry, never mind. Yeah, here we are. Jewel, NZ Crazy Man, let's go. Fast forward. Right, so I'm going first, I believe. So we're going to show you what this deck can do going first. Gold Sarcophagus is a great way to start. Good starter card, can't be stopped by Ash Blossom. Really nice. Can't even be stopped by what's the other ghost sister? Belle? Ghost Belle, I think. Ghost Belle? I don't think she can even stop that card, so really hard to negate that. What did I just do? Yeah, okay. Alright, we're negating some special summon, banishing it to Roar. Roar will activate, and then Roar will trigger the effect of itself to special summon 1 Thunder Dragon monster to your field, and then Thunder Dragon Dark gets summoned to the field. This is nice because we can trigger out Dark's effect later on. And now we're going to go ahead and do a normal summon, and so we're going to normal summon Alistar the Invoker and see if our opponent has a response. So Alistar the Invoker is summoned. Is he going to negate? Nope. No negate there, so we are happy, and we will go and search out 1 copy of Invocation. Now, before we use our Invocation, we want to make use of our resources here quite wisely. So we're going to do a link summon, and we're going to go for Cross Sheep here. In this situation, Cross Sheep isn't too useful, but I want to send both of these to the graveyard, so we might as well use Cross Sheep at this point. So off goes Alistar and off goes Dark, and then out comes Cross Sheep. And well, this is really nice because by doing using it for a link summon, Thunder Dragon Dark is also going to activate as well. Thunder Dragons were such an impressive deck. I remember when I was playing in IRL, and I was playing Trickstars at the time, and I just could not for the life of me beat this deck consistently. That's when I really had to reevaluate the way I beat decks, because I would put in a couple of cards and say, okay, I'll put in like Forbidden Chalice or Infinite Impermanence, but if you didn't draw into them through your 5-card hand and your ratios weren't right, you really weren't going to consistently negate that Colossus on the first turn, and so it killed my Trickstar deck. And Trickstars are even weaker in this game right now because they have Light Stage and Candina limited to either 2 or to 1, which really hurts that deck quite as well. We're going to go for Invoked Mechabar here, and so we are using the Thunder Dragon Matrix in our graveyard, and this is going to be nice to do with our Cross Sheep being on the field, because we're going to put Invoked Mechabar in attack position to a zone that Cross Sheep points to, and that will then trigger our Cross Sheep's effect as well. So Cross Sheep is going to activate, and it will, anytime a fusion monster is summoned to a zone it points to once per turn, you can activate one of the following effects. And this effect is going to allow us to special summon a level 4 or lower monster from our deck to the graveyard to the field. Now, this is okay because we have Link Kuriboh in our deck, and Link Kuriboh is going to send Thunder Dragon Matrix from our field back into the graveyard. And that's good because then we will trigger Thunder Dragon Matrix second effect. And so, just with this alone, our first turn plays with Thunder Dragons is so much better than, say, if you're playing pure Thunder Dragon, or if you're doing something like a Rivalry of the Warlords, or if you're playing the Chaos Dragon version. I think personally that this is the best way to play this deck. It's just so much more consistent, and there's so much you can do, and we're not even done here. So we've searched out one copy of Thunder Dragon Matrix, and now we're going to shuffle in the cards that we've used this turn, Matrix, Raw, and Dark, back into our deck to go and create a Titan. And Titan is a very, very beefy boy. He's a very, very good card to use. Very, very hard for a lot of people to get rid of. The only thing you've got to be careful with Titan is that if you want to use this protection effect, you have to have cards in your graveyard that you can banish, and Invocation is not going to be one of those cards. So we've only got one card in our graveyard. And also, I don't want to use Thunder Dragon Fusion to banish off for Thunder Dragon Titan's effect, because Thunder Dragon Fusion becomes a searcher in the next turn. So we've only got one card in our graveyard, so basically our Titan is susceptible to destruction if I choose to be stubborn and don't use Thunder Dragon Fusion's effect. We do the Invocation loop by shuffling it back into the deck and adding Alistair back to our hand. So we have two effect monsters in our deck, and our hand, sorry, to trigger off our fusion monsters. We've got one that can do do Titan's effect, and we've got one for Mechabuzz effect. Ideally, though, I don't really want to use Alistair for Mechabuzz effect, but if I have to, I will use it. And so we set off our Thunder Dragon Discharge, and we set Thunder Dragon 100 Thunders. I wanted to give this card a try. On paper, this card isn't that bad. It's a trap card that says you can special summon one Thunder monster from your graveyard to the field, and then special summon as many monsters as possible from your graveyard with the same name. However, those cards will be banished after they leave the field. That's pretty good. That's not too bad. So I went to give this card a try, but it didn't really work out for me in this deck here, in this game here. My opponent plays Plot of Extravagance, banishing 3 cards from the extra deck. I've never seen anyone really banish 3 cards. Why would you go for a 1-for-1 like that? Why would you not banish 6 cards? Maybe he thought I was going to negate it, and he's trying to bait me out here. I'm not too sure. Yeah, maybe he thought I was going to negate it with Mechabuzz. Maybe. Anyway, he activates Super Polymerization, and that kind of sucks because he's going to get rid of some of our big monsters, and you cannot respond with cards or effects in response to that card's activation, and therefore we're not going to be able to use Mechabuzz to negate it, and we're not going to be able to use Thunder Dragon Titan to negate to do a pop either. Not that there's anything to pop anyway, but he is a good way to get rid of this card. So he's going to get rid of these 2 cards. They're both light. I actually thought he was going to go for Starving Venom or Penaplant Verte. No, Penaplant, not Penaplant Verte. There's a Penaplant monster that's used 1 fusion monster, 1 dark monster on the field. So I thought it was going to be Kuriboh plus 1 fusion. But no, he has Mud Dragon of the Swamps, which is really good. That takes 2 monsters with the same attribute, but different types. And Titan is obviously a light thunder. And Mechabuzz is a psychic, I believe, a light psychic. So Mud Dragon works really well, but it looks like he hasn't got much else that he can do this turn, because he's already going to end his end phase, go to battle phase, and he's going to attack. And yeah, it tells me that his hand isn't too good at the moment, or maybe that's why he didn't want to manage 6 cards with Pot of Extravagance, because he was worried that he couldn't use his what's it called, his Super Polymerization. Maybe that's why. Mud Dragon attacks, and then we use Link Kuriboh's effect to make his attack 0. Link Kuriboh gets a lot of use in this deck because Thunder Dragon Matrix and the fact that it can search itself out. Link Kuriboh works really, really well in this deck, and so his attack goes to 0. Excuse me. His attack goes to 0, and then I go to bait phase 2, and I think he's going to end his turn. He sets 1 card, so he's going to end his turn here. I'm going to have a drink of water. 1 second. Okay, so onto our turn here. I'm going to first activate Thunder Dragon Discharge, and this is when I didn't like our card here. I thought I could use our trap card to revive a Thunder monster from our graveyard, and Thunder Dragon Titan was legally summoned, so I'm not sure why I can't summon out Thunder Dragon Titan here. I still, to be honest with you, not sure. Is it... I don't know. I actually don't know. Why could I not use my trap card in this situation? No idea. I actually genuinely have no idea. I summoned it out the legal way. It should be summoned. Unless I'm missing something about Titan, maybe. It doesn't matter too much anyway. I do get to use the card later on. So first of all, we're going to use our fusion effect. We're going to banish it from our graveyard to the banish pile, and we're going to be able to add any Thunder monster from our deck to our hand. But he's going to respond with Ash Blossom, which is unfortunate. If I were to get anything out, I probably would have got a Dark monster to banish with Allure of Darkness, so like Dark or Raw. But we're not going to be able to do that here. And I really do need a way to get something going. So first, I'm going to normal summon out our Thunder Dragon Matrix. And then that is going to trigger the effect of Thunder Dragon Discharge. Discharge is going to target his face down spell trap card, and it can banish any card then from my deck. So let's see what that card is, if he's going to respond with it or if he's going to let it be destroyed. It is a Metaverse. I was a little bit worried here because I like to do Metaverse into Mystic Mine, and I thought maybe he would go for that, but he actually isn't going to search that out. He's going to now reveal what deck he's playing, because he is going to search out using his Metaverse. He's going to go and grab a copy of, wait for it to come, the Hidden City. So he's playing Subterrors. He's playing Guru, Control, Subterrors, Extravagance, and all that good stuff. And it looks like he hasn't got many starters, so he went for the Hidden City, and that's fine. We can play around the Hidden City. If he hasn't set up his board yet, we can stop them from getting started. So Discharge is now banishing Raw, and then Raw is going to trigger, and then we're going to get a card from our deck. I think Discharge is really good. I think it's really underrated for Thunder Dragon decks. A lot of people do not play this card in Thunder Dragon decks. I think I like it. It's a searchable form, a spell trap removal. It protects your card from negation. Really good card. Really, really good card. Like if I had this card up earlier, and I then used Dark Effect, and he had Ash Blossom, he didn't use it on, say, my fusion spell, he would not have been able to use Ash Blossom to negate my effects. Or he could try to, I think, probably, but then like Orcust Protocol, it would have just protected my cards. Anyway, doesn't matter too much. We get Dark to the field, and now we want a way to trigger Dark's effect. So I'm going to send Matrix, and we're going to send Dark to the graveyard for Predaplant, Verti, and Anaconda. So off those two go. And then we're going to trigger the effects. And yeah, I was really, really happy with this. I was really, really happy with how Thunder Dragons were working with the Invoked Engine. I think this deck is a lot more viable now. I think there's ways to refine the deck around the edges. Like I said, there's a whole ton of engines that you could add. I even think with those engines, you could probably play this deck at greater than 40 cards, because the main deck is pretty solid in my opinion. So you would have to go over 40 if you really wanted to make it work, but I think it's pretty good. I think this is definitely the best way to play Thunder Dragons in my opinion in the current Legacy of the Duelist Evolution format. So if you've always wanted to try this deck out, feel free to use this deck to your will. So we've used Dark to search out Fusion, and we've used Matrix to search out another copy of itself. And now we could go for Thunder Dragon Fusion, so we're going to go for that now. Shuffle back in some of the cards. I think I have one Matrix, one Raw, and one Dark in my graveyard, so we'll shuffle them back into the deck. And you can see how easy it is to get to your Thunder Dragon Fusion with the Thunder Dragon engine itself. Mechaba just not Mechaba, but the Invoked Engine just makes it so much more viable as well. It's really, really good. So we shuffle back in the Titan that we used earlier, so we don't run out of them. We shuffle back in Matrix, and we shuffle back in Dark. And then we'll keep Raw and Banish Power, because Raw is not as easy to loop, and we do have one more copy of it somewhere else as well. Although I could have gone for Matrix, maybe, yeah, but we used the effect already. It didn't matter too much. Titan is now summoned to the field, and now I believe we have used our normal summon for this turn. So what I'm going to now do is play a Lure of Darkness. We're going to try and draw 2 and see what we get. I don't really want to banish Alistair, but I mean, we've got our board, so we're not too reliant on it. So I would rather play a Lure of Darkness now. And he's already used Ash Blossom this turn, so I don't want him to negate it again. And so we did banish our Alistair, but we did draw into Magical Meltdown. So hooray for us. We get to activate Meltdown. Meltdown's going to get us another Alistair and add it to our hand. How do I think this deck compares to some of the other Invoked decks? I think it's up there. I think it's definitely up there. The fact that Thunder Dragons are both light and dark is a lot better in my opinion than Invoked Shadow. I don't think Invoked Shadow is correct personally. I know a lot of people like Invoked Shadow, particularly in the game right now, in the actual version of the game. I don't think it's terrible. Winder is still a really good card, and you could play... you could even do Shadow Thunder Dragon, really. I was considering that at one point, but he's mashing extenders with more extenders, which isn't really what you want. You want a starter engine like Alistair. I think Thunder Dragon Invoked is probably better than Invoked Shadow in my opinion. Kinda yes, kinda no. Maybe just in Link Evolutions format. More testing would be needed. But is it as good as Mech Knight Invoked? Maybe. Titan's really powerful. We Can Shuffle was really powerful. But Mech Knights do have a lot of good cards. And they are quite self-sufficient. They kind of just work on their own. They don't really need to, say, depend on other cards. Whereas Thunder Dragons are depending on there being more starters. But I do think that it's probably viable to be able to mash them all together and make them all work. It wouldn't be a 40 card deck. You would definitely need more space than that. But you could find it. I definitely think it's achievable. I think this is actually a very competent version of Invoked. I mean, it works really, really well. There is another Invoked deck I'm going to be working on recently. Someone in my comments said, hey, have you tried out this Invoked deck? I don't want to spoil it yet. I have been testing it. I think it's amazing. I need to practice it a little bit more, and I can't wait to go through it. But in the Invoked Engine, this is why this engine is just tier 1. It can work with so many different decks and helps them out so much so. So, during all of that, what's happened here is I've used Instant Fusion to summon out Raijin. I've managed to summon out Roar to the field by discarding a Hawk. It's okay sometimes just to put your Dark Monsters on the field, because if your Dark Monsters are destroyed during your opponent's turn, they will then trigger, so that's fine. Even if I've already used the Roar this turn. And then we're going to attack with our 3200 attack big boy Titan, and we're probably going to end the turn by first doing Raijin's effect. We're going to flip it face down. If you do Instant Fusion and summon out Raijin, normally the card summoned out with Instant Fusion will be destroyed during the end phase, but because Raijin can flip itself face down, it is no longer the card that was summoned with Instant Fusion. It's just a face down card, and therefore you get to keep it for later on. And Raijin's effect is pretty good in this format. There's so many XYZ based decks, so many decks that get hurt by flipping cards face down. Link summons get hurt by it too, so Raijin could be pretty good to use as well. Our opponent plays part of his Extravagance again, and this time he actually goes for 6 cards, so he wants to draw 2. I think we know that he has the Hidden City in his hand, so that's 1 card as well to access his Guru engine, but we have ways to stop that card from being used. One of them is Thunder Dragon Discharge, but there's also another card that we can use. He activates the Hidden City. Now, one thing you need to know about the Hidden City if you're playing Subterras is that it does have the clause that you can only activate 1 Hidden City per turn. And therefore, I'm going to destroy it with Titan. And what will happen here is Titan will pop Hidden City. Hidden City field spell cards and continuous spell cards and trap cards have to be on the field in order to resolve their effects. So even though it was activated successfully, because it's destroyed, it won't resolve because it's no longer on the field. And therefore, he won't get the effect of it, and he can't use any more copies of the Hidden City because the card says it can only be activated once per turn. If it said you can only use each effect once per turn, then he would be able to use more copies of it because he used the first effect, but he didn't use the other effects, so that would be fine. But he in this situation, he cannot activate any more Hidden Cities because he's already activated one, and we didn't negate it. What I could also have done in this situation here is we have our face down card, our face down spell attack card, Thunder Dragon 100 Throws, I think it's called, or Thrones. And that will special summon that card to the field. Discharge will activate, and then we can pop it that way too. But we'll save that for later on. He is going to use Nemesis. Nemesis can shuffle one face down card back on the field, back into the graveyard. We're going to go for Thunder Dragon 100 Thunders. 100 Thunders is what it's called. And I think at this point here, my opponent's going to quit. So I'll tell you what the plan was. We were going to use 100 Thunders to summon that Matrix from the graveyard. Quick effect, do Link Karibo. Link Karibo would then send Matrix from the graveyard. What would have happened? The Matrix effect would have triggered, but the Link Karibo would have been live, and he can't destroy my Cross Sheep. And so, guys, that is an example of Thunder Dragon Invoked. I think this deck is really, really good. I think this is a competitive, viable deck. I don't know what tier I would say it is. I need to test it out more against good players. But I think it's good. I think it's really, really up there. I think it has the potential to be a tier 1 deck because it's Invoked. Invoked is so, so powerful. Anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you as always for watching my content. I'll see you soon. Take care.